Hey, welcome back to Kult of Athena's YouTube channel. I'm your host, Tom. Today we're looking at the Windlass Texas Dragoon Saber. This is supposed to be a mounted sword, hence how freaking long the thing is. So we'll take a look at some specs, up close looks, and talk about some movement with this Dragoon Saber. All right, initial thoughts for the Texas Dragoon Saber from Windlass. First thing I thought of when I saw the steel scabbard was USS, Universal Swords. They have done in the past a lot of steel scabbards, and I know this is historically accurate, but it's just what I thought of right away. So we have a steel scabbard, which is a plus. We have the rings as well. If you did want to carry this for, I don't know how many of you do mounted reenactment and things like that. If you do and you watch the channel, comment below. I would love to see YouTube videos of that stuff, of you doing reenactments, especially into the draw, and if you're actually moving with these as well. So that's first and foremost, steel scabbard, and has the rings for you to carry it, which is really cool. Second thing is looking at blade length. This is a little bit over a 34-inch blade. It's not crazy to think this could also obviously be used not mounted. It just has a lot of range. So 34 inches, you're going into like rapier and like dueling weapon type of lengths, where there's a lot of freaking range here between you and an opponent. So unequal weapons, if you're not mounted and someone is mounted, and being able to actually cut those lines, you know, for somebody who's actually coming by, if you weren't mounted, it's got good range to it. It's single edge because it's windlass and it's coming from overseas. These come unsharpened, but I'm gonna put the scabbard down just because there's no point in holding it. The edge is completely not dull. If you did want to get sharpened for cut testing, that's good. The other thing that I don't really mention a whole lot in videos, but I have trying to be more adamant about it, is if you're somebody who does saber fighting and things like that, you should have a steel trainer. I think it's, in my opinion, it's more important to have a steel training sword that's balanced similar to what you train with, like when you're sparring, or like really similar to what you have for your live blade, that you actually have something to go through different cut exercises. You're learning the different parry positions, and you're learning how to cut with an actual sword, and you're learning how to actually maneuver that. So I think a steel trainer is arguably more important than even having a live blade, because we're not going to carry this thing anyway. So I like this thing for really a general saber that is a little bit longer of range, but also to learn cutting exercises, to learn parries, and learn the different guard positions that you learn in saber. Could you go a little shorter? Sure. If you like something a little bit longer, that you can even hold somebody more at bay in these longer guard positions. You've got different punch cut variations still, and it doesn't feel so heavy that, like, you know, when you go into a punch cut and you bring this back up, it doesn't feel like you're like, oh god, like my bicep's gonna fall off. It's just, it feels like a normal weight for a sword. This is in like the two, I believe it's a little bit over 2 pounds, but for the distribution of weight, how thick the tang is and how it tapers off into a small false edge, it's totally fine for the weight for this saber. Speaking about that as well, if you were to get this sharpened, you gotta add the sharpening service at cultofathena.com. This does have there's a false edge or a top edge. That's it for the top edge. I'll get more up close looks of that, but you can see from the thickness of the tang going into the false edge, it's only a couple of inches. So you're not really going to be using a whole lot of back of the blade strikes with this. If anything, that would just aid in pulling out thrust. It would aid in perhaps maybe not getting caught on clothing and stuff like that. But it's just a top edge. You know, you're going to see more pronounced ones in Hungarian sabers. You're going to see more pronounced ones even in Polish sabers and stuff like that. So that's like first thoughts on it. I like it in the sense of, if I'm going into different saber cuts and, you know, different circling cuts, like if I'm going into circulars on like the large circle on the vertical, if I'm going into smaller cuts, if I'm holding the center and going into different thrust and changing the position of the hand and then going back into cut, feels solid. If I was specifically working saber fighting, I would get something around this size and also this point of balance and this weight, and I would be very happy with it. So that's first thoughts on it. Let's go ahead and do some up close looks of this one in the scabbard and out of the scabbard.
Going to be overall length 39 and 1/8 inch, blade length 34 inches, weight 1 pound, 13.8 ounces. We talked about that already at the edges unsharpened. 28.2 millimeter width of the blade. Thickness goes from 8 millimeters up to 3.4 millimeters, up to meaning from the closest to the guard up to the tip, where it obviously is going to get thinner. Pommels peened. Point of balance is 8 5/8 from the guard. Grip length 3 7/8 inches, and this is a leather wrapped grip and a 1075 high carbon steel blade. And this is an American blade manufactured by Windlass Steelcrafts. More up close looks of the blade out of the scabbard. They did a really good job on the handles in this one, the handle and the guard. Just really easy to keep maintained, and this thing will last you quite a while, especially if you're doing reenactments, or like we talked about, if you're doing this for your own fencing training. Having a dull saber is a great idea in your fencing training.
All right, let's talk about that a little bit. So moving through vertical cuts, dominating the center, moving through a little bit of punch cuts on the circular, moving through different guard positions and seeing what does the transition of the guard position feel like. You know, is the sword too heavy? Is it not balanced right? Is my forearm and wrists getting tired too quickly? And no, it's just a little bit heavier because it's on horseback. It's 4 horseback, but you know, larger cuts. Like, I'm not cutting where I'm like, ugh, and then letting the sword dictate where I'm going. I'm cutting, I'm stepping into the cut, which leads right into thrust. So it's a solid design. Not much different than a British saber, maybe by the weight, and roughly, yeah, maybe like 8 or 9 inches longer, it being on horseback. But that large backhand cut is going to be critical for it to fly around for that. Another rad thing too, it says Texas Dragoons on it. And it's an overall just sharp looking blade. So that's what I'm doing on the cuts, working a little bit of these higher guards as well, transitioning into different cuts, and also through guards. Hey, thanks for joining me for this quick review of the Texas Dragoon saber from Windlass. So it's a really rad saber. I like it because it just kind of brought to my attention how often we're focusing on like sharp swords. Everything's got to be razor sharp. It's got to be able to cut through Saturn or whatever, and not really looking at the other side of it of like, well, if you're doing martial arts training, you probably should have a dull steel trainer that it's the same balance as the stuff that you actually train with. So kind of just more brought that to my attention. I've got steel trainers that I train with all the time that are blunted. I think that's extremely important for exercises, for safety, and also for developing the strength and flexibility needed in order to handle swords. I'm your host, Tom, for Kult of Athena's YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next review.